Enoi Extreme Media UJ. Subscribe for all updates.
Colleagues, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate His Excellency the President on his successful re-election into office and all other presidential candidates that participated in the election. I also want to congratulate you, honorable colleagues, who made it to the August House once again, and also our colleagues who didn't make it to come back here. We know you're already leaders. You will remain part of this family, and we shall continue working with you. As the leadership of Parliament, we would want to have efforts which would be aimed at ensuring that colleagues will remain family, even outside here. Because we have those who have been going, coming back, they lose today, the next time they win. You know, it's very important to remain in touch. And that's why we worked out mechanisms to ensure that at least we'll be able to give you the minimum assistance, even when you are outside of this house. So I hope we shall continue engaging to see which better way for this family to remain, you know, even outside the house, to remain in a honorable state despite the challenges that would be coming up. Honorable colleagues, last year we were unable to hold our end of year party because we were all running up and down. We were busy in our constituencies. So as the leadership of Parliament, we decided that we should have a party for you. So that is a combination of end of year and beginning of the year. So we shall have it tomorrow at 5 p.m. at South Wing Ground Parking. I therefore invite you to attend, and we shed off the stress that we got from the field. Colleagues, I will be amending the order paper to allow laying of reports by the Auditor General for the last financial year. There are some reports which came in today, and we feel we should work on them right away. Then also, I'm happy the Minister for Finance is here, and I want to urge, I know we have the statutory timelines that are clearly provided for in as far as the budgeting process is concerned. Ministerial policy statements should be here by 15th of March. Alternative statements from the opposition by 29th of March. Annual budget estimates together with the tax bills by 1st of April, and then the budget by 31st of May. But as you know, we are in a transition period. A new government will be coming in. So we shall be, as leadership of the House, we decided we should prorogue the House by the end of April. And that means we should have finished the budget. So, Honorable Minister, we shall request you go back, you work in overdrive, and we see how best you can be generous enough to squeeze and get for us some time so that we are able to prorogue the House after we have processed the budget. And I know it's tough on you, but when you bring them here, we shall also work in overdrive here. And we shall be giving honorable colleagues enough time. We shall reduce on activities of plenary so that you can concentrate more on activities of the committees, process the budget, and we come to plenary when we are just completing that. Colleagues, that's my communication. Reaction, leader of opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the budget framework paper and the main report have most of the issues. We have only disagreed on what to do with them. And I'll straight away go on compliance. Section 8.3 of the Public Finance Management Act states the minister shall for each financial year prepare a budget framework paper which shall be consistent with the National Development Plan and with the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. consistency with the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility for Fiscal Responsibility and Involvement Plan is a legal requirement that even this Parliament cannot waive. One of the fiscal rules in the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility is the reduction of public debt to below 50% of GDP in nominal terms by the year 2025. Right Honourable Speaker and members, you have been presented with a 69 trillion proposed budget, which of course all of you know will keep rising up to the final day of appropriation. Revenue correction is projected at 40 trillion, and the rest of the money, 28 trillion, will be borrowed from domestic and external sources. So the proposal to borrow is captured on page 23 of the framework paper. The amount to be borrowed is nearly 40% of the budget. So if you approve the budget framework paper, which essentially is a draft budget, it means you have authorized the government to borrow the sums captured in the draft. Minister of Finance, the mover of this motion, is warning you that by approving the budget framework paper, you are actually authorizing them to breach the law. Their warning is captured on page 26 of the framework paper. This is what they are saying. For instance, the share of the public debt to GDP is projected to surpass the 50% target for the financial year 2025-26. And the ratio of domestic debt interest payment total revenue is also projected to exceed 12.5% benchmark. Additionally, the targets on fiscal deficit and revenue growth are also likely to be missed. The reason these rules exist is to ensure the country's macroeconomic stability. This is like a hump in a road whose aim is to physically stop reckless drivers from overspeeding. The law wants to stop NRM government from reckless spending. Right Honourable Speaker and members, you therefore cannot proceed with this framework paper unless the Public Finance Management Act and the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility is amended, or both. And it is not only us Parliament who are required to adhere to the law. Section 5 of the PFMA says Cabinet shall, in making decisions with implications on public finances or in determining, formulating and implementing government policies, as well as in performing any other functions conferred on it by this or any other act, adhere to the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility and other requirements. Section 6 provides circumstances under which we may deviate from the objectives in the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility. They include a natural disaster, an unanticipated severe economic shock, or any other significant and unforeseen event that cannot be funded from the contingency fund. This is done with the approval of Parliament. Right Honourable Speaker, I am asking, is Parliament being given the right GDP figures? Schedule 3 of the Public Finance Management Act sets out areas the framework paper or the draft budget must address. One of these areas, the average and year-end gross domestic product figures. Sharing the right GDP figures with Parliament is a legal requirement. Just to refresh the mind of honourable members, GDP means the monetary value of goods and services produced in a year. It is these goods and services that we will tax to raise revenue to finance the budget. You must therefore have the right GDP figures at all times to determine how much borrowing are you going to authorize and the right revenue correction projection. In the framework paper, the GDP figure is not explicitly stated. The gross domestic product is stated in the budget framework paper on page 15 as 251 trillion 68. Even that's what the minister said. That increase from 202 trillion in the last year budget framework paper. In his written submission to the budget committee dated January 20th, the Minister of State for General Duties, the Honourable Musasi, states on page 2 that GDP is estimated to grow, just estimated to grow to 251 trillion. The GDP figure given by the Honourable Musasi is just a forecast. The Uganda Bureau of Statistics puts the GDP at 226 trillion as of last year. And when you calculate the debt to GDP ratio of 51 given on page 20, of the budget framework paper, it gives you 226 trillion as Uganda's GDP, which is 63 billion US dollar. It is therefore wrong for finance to give 251 trillion, which is a forecast, as the GDP figure. There is always a desire by the NRM leaders to exaggerate the country's growth, which is the reason they recalculate the GDP unnecessarily. Conflicting public debt figures. The Minister of Finance gives total public debt figure as 116 trillion, which is 32 billion US dollar on page 20. This, finance says, is an increase from 94.7 trillion, which is 26 billion, translating into a debt to GDP ratio of 51%. This debt to GDP figure is calculated using the UBOS 226 trillion, what they give in the budget framework paper, as the true GDP figures. Just for emphasis, the stock of public debt is 116 trillion and GDP is 226. Those are the figures that finance is using. However, the Bank of Uganda, in its December 2025 State of the Economy report on page 10, puts public debt at 124 trillion, translating into a 54.8 debt to GDP ratio. You can see the trick here. You lower the figure of public debt and exaggerate GDP to present a lower GDP to a lower debt to GDP ratio. Then you ask Parliament to authorize more borrowing on the pretext of a sustained public debt stock. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, public debt is plunging Uganda into a crisis. The NRM government plans to borrow over 18.5 trillion from the domestic market, commercial banks, to finance the budget. The 8.9 trillion will be new loans to finance the budget and 9.6 trillion to roll over maturing debt. The central bank is concerned with the domestic debt to private sector credit. By overborrowing from commercial banks, the NRM government is crowding out the private sector. The concern of Bank of Uganda is captured on page 10 of their December State of the Economy. If you look at the private credit now, I think it's about 21 trillion, and government is borrowing sometimes up to 19 trillion. So you are competing with the citizens that you want to empower. You remove all the money, they have nothing. Our borrowing from commercial banks starves the private sector, which is employing more than 85% of the population. Ratio of interest to revenue correction. One of the fiscal rules in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility is reduction of total domestic debt interest payment to revenue, excluding grants, to 12.5%. The government plans to spend 28.6 trillion on debt servicing next financial year, of which 12.7 trillion is interest payment. The interest payment for the domestic debt is 10.7 trillion, which is 26.7% of the projected 40 trillion revenue correction. The target is 12, but you are going to pay interest of 26. And this matter is a matter of law. The rule in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility is reduction of interest payment on domestic debt 12.5% of revenue. But the budget framework paper interest payment will instead raise to 26. I hope Parliament will resist this. The Minister of Finance also agrees that such an elevated debt service burden shrinks fiscal space, leaving fewer resources available for discretionary spending in high multiplier growth enhancing sectors. And the committee noted that proposals in the budget framework paper offend even common sense. If you look at page 19 of the budget framework paper, the NRM government, the minister is praising here, wants to borrow from external sources 10 trillion to finance various projects. Certainly that will increase our debt stock as a country and will violate the rules we set ourselves out in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. The question is, have we utilized the numerous loans we have contracted to finance various projects for us to contract more? The answer is a big no. And I want to thank the Minister of Finance. They have been very generous with information. If you read the July 2025 report on the performance of externally funded projects, you will know why you have remained poor. You also know the dangers of employing old people in critical offices, knowing their biological inadequacies. When people grow old, every part of the body slows naturally. Even the thinking slows down. They begin to think in installments. Many of the projects for which we have borrowed gross sums of money are either behind schedule or have completely stagnated. And here we are being asked to recklessly approve further borrowing. I now turn to the Minister of Finance report on externally funded projects. The Minister of Finance has been monitoring performance of these projects and done some reports. The latest report samples 66 externally funded projects, as the table below illustrates. We have borrowed money to finance projects. Even in this budget, they are saying we should borrow another 10 trillion. But look, the table. The projects in agro-industrialization, 7 projects here, only 2 have been completed. 1 is on track, others behind schedule. Digital transformation, 2, 1 on track. Human capital development, 14 projects, only 1 completed, 1 on track, 12 are behind schedule. Integrated transport infrastructure and services, 12 projects for which we have borrowed money, only 2 completed, 1 on track, 18 behind schedule. I don't need to go, but the total below is that you have a total here of 66 projects sampled by finance. Only 6 are completed, 5 on track, 55 of these projects are behind schedule, including ones that you will see that have stagnated. And I'll give a list here. I'll be very brief because this is not my list. It is a list of Honorable Musasi. Kampala Jinja Expressway. We borrowed money to do this road. And I will go to the last line. This is how finance has assessed this. The physical progress of the project is 0. Money borrowed, progress is 0. They are saying, let us borrow more. That's what is in the budget framework paper. Busega Mpigi Expressway. Construction is at 46%. This road was supposed to have been completed years ago. They are at 46%. Part of the reason you will see, they are saying they don't have counter funding. And then they are saying, let us borrow and begin more projects. That's why I said you even offend common sense. In Entebbe Airport rehabilitation, this one, there is progress. But the point is, because of the delays, we are now required to pay to the contractor the total sum of 34.9 million US dollar because we delayed. So the contractor says, you delayed here and here, pay me money. Even this one, although progressing, it was never delivered on time. The Bukasa project port, this one hasn't started at all, still in the preliminary. Kampala flyover construction, finance says it has stagnated. Kampala City Roads rehabilitation, they are now revising it. The time elapsed, they are revising it. And you know each revision comes with money. Multinational Kapchorwa, Siam, Kitare, and Eldoret bypass. This one has almost been completed, but after a delay. Change Johoima Masindi Chigumba Road. The project have not been completed. More money is needed. National Lake Victoria Maritime Communication Transport Project. Here, overall progress is from 37 to by the end of April. So all these projects, they have delayed, no counter funding, they are contracting more. Ruwero Butarang Road, work is at 67%. A road that they started nearly 10 years ago, they haven't completed. Short stretch. Moyo, Yumbe, Koboko Road project. And you keep asking, why does the president repeat these roads in every budget? The progress, as you have seen, on some projects, it is 0. So every year he repeats, you think government is working. Namagunga Budadiri Narugugu Road project. The progress of the project was at 4% against a planned 4.3. This one is still in infancy. The Northeastern Road Corridor Asset Management Project. Maybe I don't have to read each and every project that is here. But you need members to interact with these projects. And I am saying in this minority report, as I try to conclude, that we borrow money to do project for which we pay a lot of money in interest, and we never complete this work. Part of the reason, no counterfunding. Anyone who's sensible, you will not be contracting more loans when you don't have counterfunding to finish the ones that you have undertaken. You will see there is one here for private sector. I think I will stop with that one. Which is project 22. Investment for industrial transformation and employment project. The investment for industrial transformation and employment is a collaborative program between the government of Uganda, represented by Minister of Finance, Bank of Uganda, private sector, and the development partners. So this project, we borrowed $218 million US. Don't utilize it. And then you come to Parliament, you say, can we borrow more? I don't know, maybe the one Musasi enjoys the word borrowing. So if he ever brings a report that doesn't have the word borrowing, you will feel very bad. You have electricity access scale-up project, same problem. Upgrade of health centers, 2 to 3, same problem, behind schedule. Uganda secondary education expansion project, money borrowed, project not making progress. I am saying in this report, don't allow them to borrow until they have completed and made progress on these ones, or else you'll just be enlarging the list. You borrow money, you pay. When you are looking at the report on loans, you will discover we pay commitment fees on money unutilized, which money we need to do other things that are being listed here.
Ssemuju, can you read the report?
If I read the report, I will delay because now I am concluding. If you want me, Mr. Speaker, I can read the report.
If you had read it,
I will delay. I am concluding now. I am on page 15, which is the last one, on rate of employment and unemployment. The committee notes that actually this information is not given, yet is a requirement by the law. One of the economic variables, the budget framework paper is supposed to address the rate of employment and unemployment in the country. This is what Schedule 3 of the law demands. Without providing any basis, the Minister of Finance states on page 16 of the framework paper that one of the macroeconomic objectives of government next financial year is to increase the stock of new jobs to about 800,000. The figure of how many jobs they created this or last year is not given. Just throwing figures around. The target of government in the NDP3 was to create 512,000 jobs annually. Like other NRM targets, this was never made. Maybe they have only made the one of staying in power. National Planning Authority in Empowerment and Skills Status Report 2022 reported that the yearly net job creation averaged 320,000 against a target of 500,000. This is too little considering that every year 700,000 Ugandans join the job market. If you look at the figures of PAYE and NSSF, there are just about 2.5 million formal jobs, which keep fluctuating. The public sector, as you are aware, employs just 400,000, and the rest are in private sector. National Planning Authority estimates 15.8 million to be of the working age, and 13 million of these are in the private sector. The UBO census report puts the figure of the working age going by the labor policy of 2011 to about 24 million. The planning authority says the quality of jobs in Uganda remains low, with 78% of the labor force engaged in vulnerable employment characterized with low pay and job insecurity. Uganda, according to NPA and World Bank reports, has the lowest business survival rate in the world. Only 1 out of the 4 farms remain operational after the first years of existence. This is what budget must address, but it is being mentioned in passing in the usual NRM business as usual casual manner. Younger people need jobs, and you cannot respond to this demand by violence and prison. Hundreds demanding equality life have been brutalized and imprisoned during this electoral period. Mr. Speaker, you know Sam Mugumya. We've been told he is being held by the army, very sick. Maybe you're not even sure if he has not died. So this is the response of the NRM. When people are demanding for work, prison. The NPA notes that while official figures show that unemployment reduced from 11 to 9 and 8.8%, in absolute terms, unemployment persists as a result of many Ugandans engaged in vulnerable employment, which is often characterized by low productivity. That's why our girls mainly are being trafficked to Middle East to work as housemaids. The boys who remain here are being marched to Luzira, Chitaria, and Kigo for disturbing the judges. The World Bank, in its July 2025 Human Capital Development and Growth Review, says Uganda is failing to harness 61% of its human capital for socio-economic development. Mr. Speaker, I am only emphasizing information which the Honorable Musasizi has given, and I thank him, which the committee has given, but they are shying away. They are saying, you, regardless of the non-compliance, please approve the framework paper. These are the dangers that you face. I ask you, honorable members, to reject this framework paper. They go and do it. First, to comply with the law, and second, to comply with common sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Shadow Minister. I'll request the Minister of Finance if he has any responses which would want to make, which can guide us during debate.